There we go.
Okay, welcome, Autism Nation, to another episode of the Adult Autism, a Spectrum of Uniqueness podcast. And I am joined today by Sharia and Chris, and welcome to the podcast.
All right.
I just want to be transparent with the audience to let them know what happened. Last time, meaning last week, Sharia and Chris had joined me and we went through this whole podcast episode, and I said, okay, we it was done, and I told them that I would try to get this posted by that night or the next day. And then I looked and I saw that there was no recording, and I thought, what the heck happened? I thought all this was recorded. And lo and behold, I found out that I had forgotten to press the record button, so nothing was recorded. So Sheree and Chris were gracious enough to do another episode with me again. So we're going to go through this one more time. And it was a wonderful conversation I think we had the last time, but we'll do it again. And this is an interesting topic this week. It's all about people who have been diagnosed with both autism and attention deficit disorder. And I think this is a fairly common thing. It all kind of falls under that umbrella of neurodivergence. And before we get started, I just want to make mention to people who are listening, especially those of you who are watching this episode on YouTube. As you go along, you might have some thoughts, some things that you're thinking about that you would like to share. And if there's anything you would like to share about the conversation we have, or maybe any experiences that you had in the past relating to autism and attention deficit disorder, feel free to subscribe to the YouTube channel and also leave your comments. And I'd love to um, read what you have to say and get back with you, and we can have a pretty good conversation that way too. But let's go ahead and get started. So I'd like to ask you to just kind of looking back, were you diagnosed with autism or ADHD first? Sherelle, why don't you go ahead and start?
Yeah, I was diagnosed with ADHD in elementary school, and I was diagnosed with autism a couple months ago.
Okay. How about you, Chris?
Yeah, I was diagnosed with ADHD earlier this year and then diagnosed with autism a couple months ago, end of October.
Okay. So I wonder, Chris, we'll start with you since both of yours have been a little bit more recent. Just kind of looking back and reflecting, do you think it would have made any kind of a difference for you if you had been diagnosed with either one of these things earlier in life?
Yeah, I think if I had been diagnosed as autistic much earlier on, it might not have helped with like other people's perception of me, but I would have at least known why I felt different to
Yeah,
everyone else.
yeah,
And I think if I had been diagnosed with ADHD earlier on, it would have helped with some of the like schoolwork and missing assignments and things. If I had
yeah.
just known I needed a little bit of help there, I probably could have set up systems that worked for me much earlier than the end of high school.
I
So
think a lot of people who are autistic um, share that in common about, when they were younger, I knew there was something different about me. Couldn't pinpoint what it was, but I didn't feel like people understood me or I understood them. I kind of felt like maybe an outsider, but there were those lingering questions. And sounds like, if you had been diagnosed a little bit earlier, you wouldn't have had those questions. It may have made a difference for you. Now,
yeah.
Sharia was a little bit different for you. You were diagnosed with attention deficit disorder when you were younger. The autism thing didn't come until a little later, though. What do you think? Did that make any difference for you that you were diagnosed with attention deficit disorder younger, or not so much?
Yeah, I don't know. I still have mixed thoughts about this because for me, getting that diagnosis was a way to, in a weird way, make my teachers feel justified as to why I was a problem child.
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't get treatment for it because we couldn't afford it. And it was at the time, not as common for females to have ADHD and definitely not have the hyperactivity that I had to the extreme that I had. And so for me, having the diagnosis felt like a confirmation that there was, in fact, something wrong with me. And
Mm-hmm.
so not having the treatment for it just made it even more harder to live with.
So in a way, it sounds like it was kind of a negative thing for you,
Mhm.
the diagnosis, where some people will have an opposite reaction where it's a validation, but it wasn't that way for you when you were younger, it sounds like. Um, plus to add on to that, you experienced what I think other people experienced, that we can't afford treatment. And so what do you do? I know that sometimes in situations like that, especially if it's if it's a medication thing where medication just can't be afforded, the parents will want to know, well, can the school do anything? Do you remember back then if the school was willing to do anything, or did they do anything, the teachers or anything to kind of help you out?
My memory is really spotty from back then. I don't have a whole lot of memory from my childhood, but from what I can remember or what I feel about my history is I don't think I got a lot of support. It wasn't until seventh grade that I had a teacher actually highlight that it was a math teacher. She had pointed out that um, maybe I wasn't being challenged enough. And so she gave me some harder math tests, and that put me in advanced math. So I was in algebra in eighth grade. And at the time, that was a really big deal. And it was like the shiny moment. Oh, it's not that I'm a bad kid or that I'm dumb. It's that I just wasn't challenged enough. And then after that, everything changed for me in a positive way.
Okay, so it took a while though for that to
Yeah.
happen. Yeah. Okay. All right. Well, both of you are dealing with this now. Now, sometimes for people with attention deficit disorder, in about 50% of the cases, people will outgrow that. But other people, they'll continue with attention deficit disorder in particular into adulthood. And both of you are continuing with both of these things into adulthood. Can you talk about just some of the challenges that this has posed to you as an adult, maybe in your work roles or in your personal lives? Chris, we'll just start off with you, just kind of looking at having both of these things that you're dealing with day in and day out. What kind of challenges have they posed for you?
Yeah, it's been very difficult to kind of, it's funny because as an autistic person, I would love to have a routines and I'd like to have a neat home and things like that. And as an ADHD person, I had a very difficult time maintaining either of
Okay.
those things. So, it's like especially when I was single, I would, sit and stare at the pile of dishes in my kitchen and desperately want to get up and go do them, but I wouldn't be able to like make myself initiate that. It's like once a quarter or something, I'd get that burst of, executive function and I'd go do all the things and my house would be clean for a week and then, kind of
Right.
slowly start again. So that's been kind of my experience. It's also been very difficult making friends and keeping them, especially as an adult out of school.
Now, you can share this if you want or not, but are you taking medication for attention deficit disorder or for autism?
No medication I'm aware of for autism, but I have not yet pursued medication for the ADHD. I do intend to in the new year, though.
Okay. And the only reason I asked about medication for autism is because some folks have a comorbid depression or anxiety that they'll take medication for in relation to that. But for you, there's not any medication yet.
Yeah, I did kind of have some anxiety when I found out I was autistic 2 years ago, before kind of when I self-identified. And I kind of slowly came out of that. Antidepressants didn't work very well for me. It caused a lot of
Okay.
sensory problems. So
Okay. Yeah. Almost backfired for you, sounds
yeah.
like. Yeah. Okay. Sure. How about you? I know that early on that medication was not an issue for attention deficit disorder. How about nowadays? Is that something that you have tried, if you care to share, and how has it worked for you?
Yeah. So in my DOT program, I got reacquainted with the therapist who reaffirmed the ADHD diagnosis, and we had talked about medication. And at that time, I had a big wall against it, and my brain is just like, I don't want to take medicine for the rest of my life, so I'm not going to do it at any cost. Well, after about 2 years in therapy, and I finished my PhD, I was just like, okay, we'll try out medicine. We'll just see how it goes. Me and my psychiatrist went through about 5 different types of ADHD medication until I found the one that
Wow.
worked.
Is that right?
Um, I have a super sensitivity to all medications, like an unusual sensitivity. The first time I had ibuprofen was in my 20s, and it was not okay. Like I couldn't even talk because it was so overwhelming to my system. Um, so I was super scared about medicine. Like, oh, if I'm already super sensitive to medicine, maybe this isn't going to be for me. So I'm on like the kid dose, like a
Hmm.
kid dose. Um, and I take it when I can remember to take it. But part of the curse of ADHD is not having a great memory. So if I don't have a routine, if I don't have it within eyesight whenever I'm doing my morning routine, then it doesn't get taken. So
Okay.
yes, I have it, but I don't always remember to take it. But luckily, it's not a medication that's going to wreak havoc on my system if I happen to forget to take it.
Right. Yeah, that's a good point. And so it sounds like it's you found the one finally. It took a
Yeah.
while. Yeah, boy, that can be frustrating, right? Man. So just kind of looking in your work roles, can you share just generally what both of you do in your respective work roles?
Yeah, I'm a software engineer. Work on building websites and yeah, helping
Okay.
people get out of debt.
Okay. Sure.
Yeah, I have my own practice. I'm a mental health therapist, licensed professional counselor, but I'm also a counselor educator and an approved supervisor.
Okay. All right. So different fields there. And I know Sharia maybe more so, well, I think probably more so in your profession, there's a lot of people contact. Chris, I'm guessing that you have people contact too. It might be in a different way than Sharia does. But I wonder if with attention deficit disorder and autism, what kind of challenges that poses for you, either in your work roles, generally speaking, or just dealing with people specifically, and kind of what you've done to kind of navigate your way through those challenges that might come up in interacting with people. Chris?
Yeah, I mean, I do not have a lot of direct kind of end user interactions.
Yeah.
But to I work at a big company and I do interact with a lot of other people on other teams. I've definitely like learned social skills, learned how to not be quite so blunt as my autistic self might otherwise be, how to do small talk kind of up to a point, just different things like that to try to kind of ease my way into conversations with people. It is very performative. It is like, I don't understand the purpose or the real meaning behind stuff, but I know how to chat with people, and that's
Mhm.
kind of as
Yeah.
far as I've got.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Thank you. How about you, Sharia?
Yeah, well, I think choosing my profession actually helped me in many, many ways.
Okay.
Studying people has helped me learn how to interact with people. I remember whenever I was learning how to teach, I didn't know the ebb and flow of teaching. Uh, you know, you have to stand in front of a classroom, you have to talk to all these students, you have to convey a
Right.
message that you're pretty passionate about, and you probably know way more information than they will ever need to know in that one class. And learning how to like dial down that floodgate. So, in learning how to give only what is needed while also paying attention to their facial expressions, their reactions,
Yeah.
and like learning how to maintain that balance in that position. And then translate, like take that bit of data and then insert the counseling relationship data where, okay, here's your therapeutic skills, listening, empathizing,
Mm-hmm.
authenticity, like unconditional positive regard. So in a way, it's very much like a dance, the counseling profession, where you know the steps to follow and you just kind of go with the dance. And it's easier for me to interact in the teaching and the counseling aspects. But when it comes to going to conferences and talking to other therapists about just general conversations, I just kind of shut down a little bit because it's just like, I don't have a script for this. I don't know how to do this. And then
Right.
there's so much anxiety that comes with, okay, if somebody comes up to me and says, hey, how are you? What are you doing? What do I say? Oh, I say the same thing and I hope that I
Right.
don't overshare.
Right.
um, and talking is a big issue. And so I go home and then I obsess over like, did
Yep.
I say too much? Did I say something that was
Mm-hmm.
inappropriate? Like, how did I censor myself? Did I censor myself? I don't even remember because my brain doesn't remember crap. So I
Yeah.
don't know how to function.
Oh, yeah, there's so many questions you ask yourself, and it's so easy to ruminate, when that kind of stuff happens. I was just thinking about I was listening to this podcast a few years ago, and it was actually a guy who was an autistic therapist like you are, Sharia, and he was part of a group practice. All of the therapists were autistic at this group practice, and it was a specialized practice to help people who are neurodivergent. I thought, what a fantastic idea that is, because I know that some people, like people who are alcoholic, people who have drug issues, or people who have ADHD or autism or whatever it is, feel like, you know what? I feel like if I had to do therapy, I'd rather see somebody who had gone through an alcohol issue like I'm going through, because they'll really understand me, and I think there are different schools of thought about that, but it just kind of made me think about that when I heard you talking about some of your experiences there. Well, I think that with, as we talk about this, there are certainly challenges that pop up. But, I think that one of the things I like to look at are strengths as well. And, what are some of the positives? Because it's so easy just to look at the negatives of autism or ADHD and overlook some of the real positive things that people experience, or some of their positive qualities and traits. So, kind of looking at yourselves, what would you say some of the positive things are, about autism, about ADHD, how those things have been positives in your lives? Chris, what about you?
Yeah, I definitely think that uh, they autism and ADHD kind of play off each other nicely in some ways. That can
Okay.
make life a little bit more hard in others, but
Okay.
it's like hyper focus in autism is great for when you can't focus with the ADHD, and then the constantly needing novelty is useful when you're stuck in the hyper focus mode for autism. So it's like
Hmm.
you can allows you to be a little bit more versatile, a little closer to kind of the workflow that like a neurotypical person might have, where they're able to move from task to task without getting stuck. And so I think that's been a real good thing. I'd say just both, I feel like both of them kind of lead me down this road of just being endlessly curious, just
Yeah.
constantly. seeking out new information and new interests. And it's some of them I dive much deeper on than others, but I just keep learning too.
Well, and it almost sounds like in some ways attention deficit disorder and autism can complement one another or kind of help one another. If
Yeah.
one is posing a challenge, the other one can kind of step up to the plate and kind of help you in certain ways. So that's interesting. Okay. All right. Sheree, how about you?
Yeah, I mean, I wholeheartedly agree with that. I think they complement each other quite well. Once you learn how to function, like once you learn how your brain works and you apply skills to make it work for you in the way that you want it to instead of it taking over your life, I think it changes everything. A lot of my clients who are diagnosed with ADHD will start lots and lots of projects and not finish them, or they just won't start at all because of that perfectionist tendency. Like,
Sure.
if I can't get it done, then I won't do it. Um, but something that is interesting that I've noticed just recently, actually, I start a lot of projects, but I generally tend to finish most of them.
Okay.
And I think that ability to have something new and novel and like whenever I wanted to learn photography, I pretty much obsessed over photography for a long time until I became really good at it. And then I started doing sessions and then I became a thing. And then when I was obsessing over music, like I could focus on an instrument and learn it and understand it and really dive into it. Whereas I think a lot of people with ADHD, from what I've heard, anyways, they'll start something, they'll get decent, and then they'll switch to something new. And I think part of the autistic qualities is being able to really get set in a routine. And so doing a routine is something that's so new and fresh and exciting. It almost makes it um, harder to let go of.
Mm-hmm.
And so you finish more, or I finish more. I don't know if other people are like that too, but like I become more versatile in what I can do and what I can read and digest because I can create a routine around the novelties. But I
Wow.
absolutely also have to have a routine. Otherwise, I will be depressed and I will be incredibly anxious because without a routine, without my phone reminders, the ADHD part of my brain that is so craving dopamine all the time, it's not going to get its fix. And then I will get depressed. And so I have to use so many tools, which sucks, but also is needed to help me with my executive functioning. But once I actually use the tools, it activates the autistic piece of me that like really craves that routine and it works really well.
You've
Or
really
that's my
figured stuff out about yourself, haven't you?
yeah.
Yeah.
I
So
a
yeah,
good base of
I
myself.
wonder, and I wonder about that for both of you. Um, and I'm guessing that this journey that both of you have been on just hasn't been since you've been diagnosed with autism, or I mean, this is something that you've kind of been it's been part of you your whole lives, these things that we've been talking about today. And I wonder if does self-reflection figure into this? I mean, do you do a lot of thinking about yourself and who you are? Why do I do the things that I do? And and how does all that kind of figure into your identity as a person? Because I know some people, let's say who are autistic will kind of think about themselves primarily as I'm autistic. Other people will say, well, yeah, I'm autistic, but that's not the primary thing about myself. I'm a musician, I'm a mom, and I'm all these other things too. And they don't put autism, front and center. And I wonder for you folks, how that works as part of your identity. I mean, um, do you kind of go through life every day, just kind of thinking, just kind of this, I'm autistic, I'm ADHD. Or does it kind of depend on the day? I mean, I'm not sure if I'm phrasing all this thing right, but can you respond to any of those things?
Um, yeah, I would say it comes up sometimes during the day. It's definitely not kind of where I lead with most of the time.
Yeah.
Uh, and it does tend to come up more often as, the negative. It's the
Okay.
oops, I got distracted and forgot to leave work, though, I kind of laugh to myself and say, well, that's ADHD for you,
Yeah.
or I'm constantly having to kind of manage my sensory environment. And so that's kind of a constant kind of slow drip reminder of the autism. Um, but it's like I think a lot of the positive aspects about myself, like the curiosity and the kind of constant desire to improve, my processes, my interactions with people, and the stuff like that all stem from the autism and the ADHD. So that's,
Yeah.
you know, I think it's a little subtle sometimes. I don't necessarily frame it in terms of the
Yeah.
conditions, but it
Right.
it definitely, like, the aspects of myself that I enjoy are aspects that I would not have as strongly if I did not have these conditions.
Right. It's not like you're thinking I'm autistic or I'm ADHD. It's not that, out in front like that. It's just like maybe just throughout the course of the day, things will happen that either make you think, oh, that's my ADHD, or maybe even more subtly, like you were talking about, that I'm just being curious. And that's a really cool feature and a real cool thing about you. Because um, I think curiosity, I love curiosity because I think it gives life a lot of meaning. So it's a very cool thing. Sure, anything you want to add about that, pertaining to that?
Yeah, I think a pivotal moment for me was going to therapy because pre-therapy, all I thought about was how different I was and how bad that was.
Okay.
And so it wasn't oh, I have ADHD, I'm autistic. It's there's something clearly wrong with me because I can't fit in anywhere.
Hmm.
After therapy and learning, oh, actually, you have ADHD, you have autism. Like, once that came to light as being a good thing,
Yes.
then there was an absolute obsession for 2 years on what does this mean? What do you mean I can
Yeah.
have these disorders? Are they disorders? Um,
Well,
can I do
that's
something with it? Like, and then yeah, I did obsess over it for quite some time. And I think it took going through all of the obsessions to get to a point where I like who I am. I like how I function and I function really well. And so I
yeah.
don't think about it now unless I'm interacting with the client and I'm finding like I'm having countertransference. Oh, hey, their brain is skipping like mine gets. Oh, they're fixated on. So then it
Yeah.
comes to like, I think I've come to accept who I am, and so I don't obsess over it as much as I used to.
Hmm.
But yeah,
Yeah.
that's that.
Yeah. Well, we're getting toward the end of our episode here, and I just like you two to share if there's one thing you'd like to share with the Autism Nation audience, the listeners. What's one takeaway, one thing that you would like them to know about what we've talked about tonight, or anything else that you'd like to share with them?
Um, I mean, I would definitely say find your tribe. 2 years ago, when I first kind of identified as being autistic, I found a local autism peer support group.
Hmm.
Uh, and seeing all of these other adults that had autism, and about half of them also have ADHD, it's like it was very clear that, like, yes, this was the correct um, kind of identification for myself, because I
Hmm.
wasn't 100% sure then. And also, just, I think, finding people, whatever platform you're on, whether it's YouTube or Twitter or Instagram or whatever, find other autistic creators there to follow so that you can hear their stories, because
Yeah.
I think you get enough of those different stories together, you can find people who are very similar to you, because you have some autistic people that are like very different, But then if you kind of spread the net wide enough, you can find other people who are very similar to you, and it's very validating to kind of see those other people, and they're like, oh yeah, that sounds exactly like my life, you know?
Yes, yes. And I think, there are so many good books out there now. I think if you look back about 5 years ago, there were books out there, but not as many as there are now. And same with YouTube channels and podcasts about autism or ADHD, and there are some really good ones out there. So, and plus the groups that you were talking about. Sharia, how about you? What's a takeaway for the audience?
Um, Biggest takeaway for me was learning there's a different side uh, of everything, and being curious, being so curious about yourself. Letting go of the stigma of, is this a fad? Am I making it up? All of the things that come with
Yeah.
these diagnoses, being able to see that and evaluating. Uh, I don't know if it is or isn't, but I'm going to do my research, kind of like Christopher was saying, like, I'm going to figure out what aligns with me. And then I'm going to be so curious, and I'm going to be so compassionate to myself. Because if I can grant myself that compassion, then maybe others will too.
Yeah, the self-compassion is so important, isn't it? I mean, oh my gosh. And I like what you said about the curiosity. I find that I do both types of evaluations, ADHD and autism, all the time for adults. And when I ask people at the very end, after they've kind of gone through the interview, they've taken all of the tests, and I go over the test results with them, and I ask them, well, how does this feel, that I've diagnosed you with whatever it is? uh, and I would say probably in about 80% of the cases, especially for autism, they'll say, I feel validated, because it's something that they suspected for so long. And like Chris, I think you were talking about self-diagnosis. And for some people, that's good enough. They don't feel the need to do the formal diagnostic assessment. Some people want the validation, and though, and that's what I find when I ask that question. It's a very common experience, and for them, it means a lot that somebody um, objectively just kind of looked at them, kind of talked with them, had dialogue, and saw that yes, what you suspected all along, it's what's going on here, and it's a good thing, and it's not a bad thing. So. Well, I thank so much to the two of you for doing this again. And this time we are going to get this thing out there, because I can see that I'm actually recording this time. So thank you so much for being part of this. And happy holidays. We're about less than 10 days, I think, away from Christmas. So happy holidays, and thanks again for being part of this.
Thank you.